Salut! Now that we've learned some common ER verbs, let's talk about how to conjugate those verbs. When I say conjugate, what I mean is use them in context, use them in a sentence, and use these verbs with a different subject, like I, you, he, she, it, we, they. We've learned the infinitive of the verb, like parler means to speak. But I'm going to conjugate it and say I speak or I am speaking. So here is what a conjugated verb would look like in English. I speak, you speak, he speaks. There it is. We've conjugated it by adding a little S. So that is what conjugating in English looks like. Usually it's pretty easy. The il, elle form, the he, she form gets an S. In French, there are different endings that we're going to add for every subject pronoun. So let's look. When you get a verb like parler, to speak, this is the infinitive at the top. The untouched, unconjugated form of the verb to speak is parler. It's an ER verb. If you see the ER on the end, that's the infinitive of an ER verb. It is not conjugated. So I take my subject pronouns, je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, elle, and I'm going to change the endings of parler to match. That is conjugating a verb. Parler is an ER verb, so what I will do is remove the ER from the verb parler, and then I will add these endings instead. E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, ENT. So for the verb parler, je parle, I'll add an E. Tu parles, ES for tu. For the il, elle, on forms, I'll have just the letter E. Il parle, elle parle, on parle. For the nous form, I will have ONS on the end, nous parlons. For the vous form, I'll have just EZ on the end, vous parlez. And then il and elle, my ending, I drop the ER and instead I add the letters ENT, which are silent, and they are pronounced parle. So parler, to speak. Je parle is I speak. Tu parles, you speak. Il parle, he speaks. Nous parlons, we speak. Vous parlez, you or y'all speak. Ils parlent, they are speaking. Let me pause this video and clean off my whiteboard so I can show you another example. So let's take the verb danser, for example. Danser is an ER verb. It means to dance. And first I will take my infinitive, danser, and I will cut off the ER to find the stem. So my stem is danse, D-A-N-S. So I will write that stem, danse, 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 and then I need to add the endings that I just went over. Je danse with an E, tu danses, E-S, il, elle danse, nous dansons, O-N-S. There it is. Vous dansez, E-Z, and il danse, E-N-T. Je danse, tu danses, elle danse, nous dansons, vous dansez, il danse. These are the endings we need to memorize. E, E-S, E, O-N-S, E-Z, E-N-T. Then we add E, E-S-E, O-N-S, E-Z, E-N-T to whatever infinitive you've been given. And the idea is that any regular ER verb, voila, you know how to conjugate it. You just follow this pattern that we've seen. As far as pronunciation goes, there's a little something that French teachers call la butte, the boot. Inside of this boot shape, je, tu, il, and il plural, these endings are silent. So most of these final E's, ES's, ENT's we don't hear. Je parle, tu parles, il parle, il plural, parle. We don't hear those endings. Whereas nous parlons, vous parlez, I do hear those. Nous parlons, vous parlez. One other little thing to note about some regular ER verbs, if they begin with a vowel sound, like aimer, adorer, étudier, écouter, habiter, that starts with an H, but it's a vowel pronounced sound, habiter. If you have a verb that starts with a vowel sound, one small change you need to make is that the je form needs to contract. So instead of saying je aime, you're going to say j'aime to make it flow a little bit more smoothly. Here are two more examples below. J'habite à Paris. I live in Paris. J'étudie le français. I study French. J'habite, j'étudie. I'll do a J apostrophe to make that sound very smooth. As far as translating these, what do they mean? Well, in English, there are three different ways to form the present tense. In French, there's just one. In French, you just conjugate like this. And then in English, that can have multiple meanings. For example, je danse can mean I dance. So it can be a simple direct translation. Or it can mean I am dancing, which is actually in English called the present progressive. It emphasizes what's happening right now. Or I could also say I do dance. If somebody said, vous dansez? Do you dance? I could say, oui, je danse. Yes, I do dance. In English, we can say I dance, I am dancing, I do dance. In French, it's just this. So two more examples. Les amis parlent français can mean the friends speak French. The friends are speaking French. The friends do speak French. Is there really a big difference in those three sentences? In my mind, no, it's just people talking right now. It's the present tense, so it's happening right now. The English differences are minimal. One more example, le professeur travaille, the teacher works, the teacher is working, the teacher does work, are all legitimate translations of this sentence. You will never use the verb être when you're talking in the present tense to say what people are doing. You will never have two verbs like are speaking put together like that. In French, the present tense is one word. So you will never do this and say les amis sont parler français, to say the friends are speaking French. Imagine there's a cédille on that letter C. In English, we have these two verbs put together. It's a problem that American students try to do, is put two verbs side by side. That will not happen here for the present tense. You will never say the teacher is working by saying le professeur est travailler. The teacher is to work is what you're actually getting. It doesn't translate right. It doesn't make sense. So don't do that. They don't work that way. The present tense is much more simple than English. It's just the one verb that you've conjugated by dropping the ER and adding the right endings. Just a few more tiny things. Verbs of preference like adorer, aimer, and détester can be followed by a noun or by an infinitive. So you can love, like, or hate things, or you can also love, like, or hate activities. When you follow these verbs with a noun, use a definite article, le, la, l apostrophe, or les. Like j'aime mieux le théâtre. I prefer the theater class. We don't use the in English, but in French you'll include it. Julien déteste les devoirs. Julien hates homework. It's like saying the homework. We always need some sort of word in front of a noun. In this scenario, we needed a definite article in front of that noun. And when you follow it with another verb, you don't conjugate that second verb, you leave it in the infinitive form. So if you want to say you like, love, or hate an activity, you will conjugate love or hate or like, but you won't conjugate the second thing. Just like in English, we love to eat here. Nous adorons manger ici. They hate to study together. Ils détestent étudier ensemble. They hate conjugated, to study not conjugated. Last but not least, we do have a couple of spell changes in ER verbs. For example, here are two common ones. If you have a verb that ends in GER, like manger, voyager, or nager, the new form gets an extra little E in there. The purpose of the tiny E is to keep the G sound soft. If you forget that E, that's not pronounced mangeons anymore, that's pronounced mangon. And so to keep the G sound soft, we'll insert a little E there, nous mangeons. And then the verb commencer, to begin, to start. In the new form, you will put a cédille, a tiny little tail on that C, to keep the C sound soft. If I forget the cédille, that would be pronounced commençons. CO is a hard C sound, commençons. To avoid that, I'll put a little cédille tail on it to make commençons. Nous commençons, we begin, we start. You don't need the extra little E's. You don't need extra C's with say dire for the other forms because notice they already are GE. And CE is a soft C sound. Je commence, tu commences, etc. Lastly, and this is the end, to command somebody to do something, you are going to use just the one simple word. For vous, if I want to command a whole room and say, guys, speak, I'll say parlez, parlez. If I want to say class, all of you, work, I'll say travailler, travailler. I'll use the vous form of the verb all alone. If I want to say let's do it, and I'm involved too, hey, let's talk, I'll say parlons. And I'll use the ONS, the nous form, parlons. Now, I won't say nous, I won't say nous parlons, because that means we are talking. I want to just say, hey, let's talk, parlons. Same thing with let's get to work, travaillons, travaillons. If I'm talking to one person, I just use the tu form minus the S. I drop that S and I just say parle, travaille. It is worth noting that ER verbs, the command forms all look like this. Être, the verb that we saw previously, is irregular. It's a little different. It's fun to say. Sois, soyons, soyez. Sois poli, be polite, one person. Soyons polis, let's be polite, to a group with me included. Soyez poli, hey, you guys, be polite. Soyez poli. And that is it for right now. That is how you conjugate ER verbs. You drop the ER, you add the endings we saw, and let's practice with what we just learned. Au revoir.